All right, guys, we are here to talk about the state of the game, and I am joined today by my buddy pal and my bromance compatriot Wolverthor. I love Wolverthor. You are a good human. I like you a lot. You
Oh,
you're one of the people that made me want to be a content creator because you can tell when somebody's a good noodle and you're a good noodle. So I hope lots of people go and sub to Wolverthor because he gets my stamp of approval as a good person, and he's a passionate content creator, which I can get behind. So we're gonna talk about some state of the game stuff, and then I feel like Wolvie and I, because of our dynamic in the game, we have some unique perspectives that are exclusive to one another. So Wolvie is basically Wolvie, would you define yourself as cheap to play, free to play? Like where are you at in the grand
I
scheme
would
of spending?
say, I mean, soft launch completely free to play the whole
Okay.
time. I'd say cheapish to play, between Dolphin and cheapish to play, if there's
Okay.
a difference there. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
going
yeah.
crazy, I've spent a little bit, but
Couple bucks.
more
Yeah.
more to more to catch up from what I didn't do in soft probably. And once I did that kind of little, like, I'd say burst, I've kind of slowed down and just offer here and there just as I see them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you weren't particularly. In fact, you were being very careful about how you spent money in the beginning because you're feeling the game out. It took me
Oh,
a
yeah.
few days. Yeah. So recently we got some dev notes, and it was a knee-jerk reaction to kind of put a band-aid on how some people felt. And things have transpired since then. We've seen it personally because of our position in the game as not only content creators, but the alliance that we're in is, I guess, arguably one of or the most, as far as spenders and power players and stuff go, it's kind of universally known as, like, it's that alliance. It's also not to say, like Wolvie said, he joined what, like, you've been 500K, you've built up now where you're like, what are you now? You're like,
I'm like 70-ish, I think.
yeah, but yeah, and that's,
Oh,
which
okay,
isn't
not
anything
bad.
crazy at this point. We have Shane just joined like 2 days ago. Shane is just broke half a mil. So we've got plenty of people in
Oh,
our
yeah,
alliance
Azura?
too that are,
Yeah.
Zura's 550. So it is a mixed bag. It's not just a group full of whales or anything like that. So the thing with the dev notes, how do you feel about them? Like, what was your impression?
Personally, I like them, honestly. I look at this as a nice, I don't know if I'd call it an olive branch per se, but
Yeah.
there were stories plastered throughout this thing. It started with one, it ended with one. It was, throughout. It wasn't just kind of like, you know what, this is what we're doing. I don't want to say screw off, but screw off, like you
Yeah,
get what
yeah,
you
yeah.
get. It was very apologetic. It explained some of the things happening.
Yeah, I
right,
think
wrong,
they
or
said I'm
indifferent.
sorry like 6 times in that.
It was
Yeah.
crazy. So, like,
Yeah.
honestly, sometimes for me, that's all it takes, at least up front. This is a
Yeah,
newer
some
game.
follow through is important after that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Follow through is huge. We've seen that in some
So,
other games where it was just words, but we'll see. I'm okay.
or
It's
sometimes no words. Sometimes
or
there's stuff
nothing.
where
Yes.
yeah. So you and I are used to that from. So I quote unquote retired from Marvel Strike Force. You still play. You're an envoy there. You've been deep into that game for a long time. You have not quit. Maybe you're not like super pumped on the game, or maybe you are. Is the game going? I've heard the game's made improvements. Not to segue into Marvel Strike Force, but
I'll keep it short. It's still got a lot of the same struggles
Yeah.
it's had for a long time. Lots of bugs on patches. I've just gotten to the point where I've just, even a while ago, I've accepted it is what it is.
yeah.
So people are like, it's better. I'm like, nah, I disagree, but whatever. It's
Right.
there.
So for us, though, this level of communication wildly on the other end of the spectrum. This is something you and I aren't used to. The apologetic role that they took in the dev notes, and if there's follow through soon, really soon. I feel like our expectation is that this is going to happen like immediately, and that would also be something we're not used to. We're used to things saying changes are coming next year.
Yeah.
Who knows when? There are things like they said with the other game with War, for instance. They made announcements about War like 5 months ago. Nothing ever came. So that's normal. A lot of the game modes would be broken, bugs fixed, or not fixed, etc. MSF aside, there are also people that have a different perspective, and we have seen, even though they extended this olive branch to us, that there's still, regardless of that, we have seen a lot of people either pausing their play or maybe quitting. I don't want to be presumptuous, but we see even in our alliance that has very active players. We have a very active player base. I can tell you what, my friends list, I've gone sometimes a month and a half without kicking anybody off my friends list for inactivity. Our alliance is mostly that way too. It's very seldom there's attrition from lack of gameplay, but most recently, I would say I bet you there's 4 or 5 people right now that are at 2 days, 3 days not where they haven't played, and then there are a couple open spots even where unusual for our alliance, and so it raises an eyebrow to what how the community feels right now. Is it feels bad, man? Are you optimistic? I think a lot of people are split on this whole thing. Like very split. It's right. It feels right down the middle. How does it feel for you? Does it feel that way for you? Do you co-sign on that assessment?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of different opinions. That's where I'd probably start. For me personally, and part of this might be because I've gone slower a little bit in the game and maybe not invested as much in certain paths.
Yeah.
That I'm okay. Like I'm not super upset. I've got things to still do in the game, so I'm good. But I totally see the perspective of some of the people who haven't logged in for a few days because they did a bunch of data research. They've kind of figured out what stats certain matter. They went heavy into it, and then some things just shadow change that. And you got to kind of compartmentalize some of the things. The blog is great in itself, but it does that issue that I just mentioned is something different. And that issue I do have a problem with. And if that doesn't get fixed pretty quick, I'm going to be upset myself, even though it does not really affect me all that much.
It's about principle at that point. It's the lack of transparency. 100%. Yeah. And it's for things where, because this game can be so spend heavy, you have to be transparent about these kind of changes, especially no matter if they affect the player base positively or not. A change like this, some of these stealth adjustments have gone both ways. And when you have people financially investing in your game, you gotta put that information out there for us to, and then have us be able to, it can't be just like, so I realized that you invested in crit rate. Sorry, I know we didn't say anything, but now that's a dead stat or something. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So we've seen a lot of very big spenders, I mean, we got to be fair here. The game relies on those people to spend money because the game isn't free to make. So if some of these big spenders aren't playing the game, I mean, they're going to feel it. And there's people leaving for other reasons as well. This is kind of a convoluted thing with the it's not just some people, there's somebody saying in chat, there's a lack of end game right now, and we do have invasion coming, but there's other reasons. Some people are bored. Some people are put off by several other things. But so collectively right now, we're seeing some things happen where we're like, geez, like what's going on? But you and I personally are like, okay, we're okay with where everything's like, we're not happy, sad. The patch, I was like, I give it a 5. That's where I ended on a scale 1 to 10.
Yeah, like a 5 out of 10. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not and that's just, it's fine. So here's the other thing too. One other thing that's wearing on some of the player base is, and I don't know if this is the norm, there does feel to be, because, and I don't know if it all segues back into whaling and how it affects PvP. So player versus player, the one-on-one interactions players have with one another, and how the financial investment can give people advantages that way. There are some people that spend money that whale or spend a little bit, whatever the case may be. And whale shaming is like a thing in this game, like big time. It's a normal thing for people to try to create a perspective like if you whale, there's an association that they feel should be put on you where you're bad. You shouldn't do that. But however, the game is not free to make. So there's this weird like catch-22 with that. There's other dynamics here at play too with where what the upper end of what money should be able to get you. It does feel like the ceiling can be for people willing to go that far, where that incremental edge can get further and further. The problem is that some of the player base takes this personally towards other players, when technically those players don't control any of that. So it's this weird thing where they're mad at other players for development things. Do you feel like that's fair?
Yeah, and there's kind of a lot there. One of the things that I want to say is, as a cheap to play type player who's been on free to play situations, has played with whales, krakens, all the different things. I've seen a lot of different ranges of player, is that without somebody, whether it's a whale or kraken, spending money on this game, the game will go away. Period.
Yeah.
So it's not free. You don't pay a monthly subscription to it to play. There's not ads in the game. So we need people to spend money on the game, period. Right? So one of the things you mentioned is this concept of, whale shaming or, what's going on. People feel, and I can't for the life of me figure this out necessarily. I think it's probably some just human situation where, MV or something. I don't want to say that because I guarantee right now people are like, screw that guy. What is he talking about? It's like, well, hold on a second here. Hold on, because why, to me, and you and I talked about this a little bit, is my personal view on anybody spending money on anything. It doesn't matter if it's a game or something else. As long as you are not, I think the example I use, like buying people's babies to steal them or something like that wrong, or doing something evil, whatever, do you, man. Like, you want to go be a gambler, go gamble. It's not hurting me. To me, it's like, okay, so whatever person, whether it's me, you, or Joe Schmo, wants to spend money in a game, if they want to spend $7 billion on a game, okay. And if the developers let them spend $7 billion to either get an inch ahead of me or 17 miles ahead of me, that's the game's decision. That's that person's decision.
So technically it's in everyone's best interest that happens, because the game will be so intuitively you would think that if someone spent hypothetically $7 billion, that the game's going to be going pretty strongly at that point.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I want that. So me, in whatever rankings I care about, fine, I'll be number 2. You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I'll be, so say there's 10 of those people, fine, I'll be number 11. You know, it's like, so be it. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to be the best that I can be, given the resources that I put in the game. I understand there's going to be somebody who spend more than me as given my role, but that's me. That's what I accept.
Yeah.
And I don't think everybody else does, but I think the big missing component, and I'm not trying to be a whale apologist here or anything like that. I certainly think that sometimes I think whales can spend money when it's like, don't spend money on this. They're doing bad things. Stop.
Yeah.
But that's not this at this point. It's like, look, who cares? Let them do you. And if they do, and if you ever get to that point, then you as a free to play type can choose like, look, you know what, maybe I don't want to play anymore. And I think that's fine as well.
Yeah. Yep. But some of the players take that personally towards the person spending the money when it's really not on them. And some of this stuff, okay, so we all know World Chat's a kind of a crazy, you know what I mean? Yeah. So there's this interesting thing, and we all know World Chat, there's a lot of very, some would say over the top interactions with player to player and stuff, some stuff that has to do with the game, some stuff that doesn't. There was someone earlier that was just rampantly, anonymously saying homophobic slurs, for instance. That's not like wildly unusual for World Chat either. Now we come from another game where it's not that doesn't exist in all the games. I think in MSF though, it's like you have the choice to put it on where it defaults to Alliance chat. So you never really see that. Whereas here in this game, it almost feels like you're standing in line at the grocery store and there's the Inquirer staring you at in the face and you're just like, who's Angelina Jolie?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she just adopted how many more kids? Like, and you just flip it open. You're like, man, I can't help myself. Next thing you know, you're flipping through the Inquirer and you're like, I know I shouldn't be, but it does suck you in. And I think it's because this game does have the world chat by default sitting up at the top of your UI for where you can see it. And it is, I'm going to admit, it's a guilty pleasure of mine to read it.
Yeah.
I never engaged in world chat in Marvel Strike Force ever. This game, I like to joke around in there and see if I can make people like I'm primarily, not even primarily, I'm like pretty close to 100% a positive person. I can say you are as well, where you're one of the most positive people I know, but because of some of the things that we've been talking about, like people target you even, and you don't even, just because you're in a specific alliance that they associate, because these people over here play this way, that you're somehow accountable for that. and it's a really unusual, and some of the stuff has gone as far as we know other content creators that have been, now I was unfamiliar with this term, that have been, if you want to explain this to me, I recently just heard of this, doxing. This is a thing that's happening right now. Doxing, I'd never heard of it. And could you give some perspective on what doxing is, Wolverthor?
Yeah, I mean, and I can't say I'm an expert per se, but the long and short of it is somebody figuring out somebody's personal information, whether it be address or, actual like social security number, like phone numbers, all those, and putting it out there. Mm-hmm. Which is like, that is, to me, I don't know. I mean, that's just taking it to a level. It's like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, it's that happens all the time. And it's a reason a lot of people don't want to make content, or two, sometimes even show their face in content. Yeah. And it's very unfortunate that happens, sadly.
Yeah. It's, that's kind of wild too, that, and that's not super unusual. Do you feel like that there's a disparage with this game from what's normal in other games when it comes to, because of this whaling effect that that PvP has on some people's, like, obviously it's like mental health to some extent, where they have an emotional response to it, to where they're angry at other players over what they spend. Do you feel like that there's a disproportionate amount of people in this game because of that are where some of the emotions that run high over this are more so than other games? Like, as an MSF, like, I can tell you that community, very, very positive. I can count on one hand the times there was really ever anything you know what I mean? Like, there's seems very little.
It was chill. Not a lot there. Yeah, I mean, the biggest things you'd ever hear was like arena shard stuff, or maybe alliance drama,
rubber banding.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that. This alliance is shelling, stop it, blah blah blah.
Right. Yeah.
But generally speaking, I agree with you that particular game was generally positive. Most people's interaction was more just like theory crafting, hating or loving the game at whatever point it was. As far as this game, so that one is, it also has a little bit different dynamic. For what the only other comparison I have is League of Legends. Okay. And League of Legends, it's a kind of a capture the flag type game, 5v5 sort of thing. And I will say that game I quit that game because it was so toxic. It's gotten a lot better. But like, look, I wasn't the greatest player in that. I was okay. I wasn't bad, but like, there would be like, you wouldn't even necessarily be on comms with someone, and you wouldn't know how to play with each other. So I might have a play style and I'm in the same lane as you, and we're partners, and you might want to play something different, but we don't know that. And then you just, without even saying anything, start swearing at me and telling me like, I'm the worst and all these things. And I'm like, dude, like, why are you being aggressive attacking them? Like, there's mobs. Anyway, I'm not going to get in the strategy of the game, but there was just like, how I saw the picture was different than them. So anyway, I just finally got sick. I mean, I remember playing League where there's points where I'd get killed and I'd slam my hand on the desk and be like, okay, this is too much. Like, it's a ranked match. I care too much. Why do I care about this digital ranking? This doesn't make sense to me. I need to dial it back some. So bringing that to this game, I think there's this PvP-esque real life ranking situation that people get upset about, where they're like, I want to see myself top 10, top 5, top whatever, and you are keeping me from that. And I'm mad about that for whatever reason. Whether it's because I have an issue with you, because I have an issue with somebody spending, I have an issue with my, deficiencies, whatever it might be, but I have an issue. So I'm now going to do what I can do to make myself feel better about that. And whatever that maybe that's doxing you, maybe that's calling you out in world chat, maybe that's commenting on your YouTube videos or saying whatever it might be.
So the funny story, the calling out in world chat made me think of this. So last night, so the most controversial aspect of this game right now is, supposedly previous was Dark Zone, and they added these PvE channels. Funny story, last night I go into Dark Zone, like we're talking like 2 hours after reset, so very late last night, which is technically this morning. I go into Dark Zone because I feel like nobody's gonna bother me in there, and I go into the PvP area because I feel like there's it works out for me. There's a marginal difference in, and I don't know to what extent, to where I'll get more EXP. Chances are it's a graveyard in there at that time of day. No big deal. So I go into my little spot I like to farm EXP at. I fly in, I land, and I don't see anyone around. Now, the clipping, you can only see so much anyway because the groups are spaced around a particular distance. So I start attacking a group of monsters, and I start my thing. I'm on auto and on scales just in case I go AFK and somebody actually does try to kill me. Maybe I give myself a decent chance to stay alive. I'm bebopping around YouTube and doing other stuff on one screen, and my game is up on the other. And right immediately after I start, I see a Spider-Man come from behind me, and then he swings around me and he's going into his animations. And I'm like, is this guy attacking me? Because it's not like nobody knows from the armor or whatever, like who I am or whatever. But I was like, yeah, this guy's, so it took me a second. My brain's processing this. Yeah, this guy's PvPing me. He's attacking me. Okay. So it happened all so quick. I actually tried to grab my controls and stop from attacking him because I was unsure at first. And then when I realized, yep, this guy is really attacking me, because he started from behind me. So it was him that initiated it. And then I was just on auto at that point. My character killed his. And then I was like, that's weird. And it's somebody I'd never seen before. I'd never heard of the guy, but he was like a 900K plus Spider-Man. So I go on with my day, and this is what's ironic about some of this PvP stuff. I don't like to have my gameplay necessarily like affect others people's if it doesn't have to. I'm not somebody, now when you have game modes like Omega War and Dimensional Duel, that's part of ranking. I apologize that I have to kill you to get a good score, but that's just, we all have an agreement, I feel like, unspoken agreement that we all know what we signed up for. However, because I don't need to kill this Spider-Man, I was a little empathetic for a second. And I was like, well, then part of me is like, well, this guy attacked me, and now that they have these new channels, I shouldn't feel guilty. So literally 2 minutes later, in world chat, it had to be bleeped. He said, that's why everyone bleep, bleep, bleep hates you. And I was like, whoa. And it was just one of those things that just blew my mind. Like, none of this matters at the end of the day. Just really, everyone's going to find a reason to be ticked off. The irony of that story, too, is that while I was on auto, I accidentally killed a couple more people that I kind of knew. So it wasn't like an on-purpose thing. And in location chat, I said, hey, man, I'm on auto if you want to group up. We grouped up. Eventually, in my little farming spot, I had a full or close to full group where I was farming with these guys, and I was completely okay with sharing the XP, and there was no spite, and we were all socializing, talking. They were talking about my videos and how much they appreciated. It was a really great experience, but that was a decision that was made in that moment where no one took me accidentally killing them personally. And we had what I would say, a good night. And it probably, because I kill things quickly, affected them overall in a positive way. But the irony was that at first, I had this guy that had to say something like, that was kind of like, the way I read into that was that this is a guy that probably thinks content creators are smug or something, and that he felt like he needed to get a little digger on me before he signed off for the day or something. And it rubbed him a certain way. And I was like, man, like, at the end of the day, is there anything you can do about this stuff? Does it matter? I don't know. Is it just a people issue for these people that are either triggered over spending, over the PvP and the inability to deal with the effects of being killed in the game and not tie emotion to it? Or I don't know. But the thing was, I probably would have just invited the guy to my group, but he didn't really even give me a chance. And there was like this little part of me. I was like, well, screw him. He tried to attack me. So like, why am I supposed to be nice to you? It's a really weird dynamic where it's interesting that a dynamic that's built into the game by the developers for what the financial ceiling is for how you can incrementally make your character stronger, that there is some threshold for only a small pair of plays. It's not like everybody gets mad about this stuff. Some people have a very positive perspective about spending in this game, even if they don't. But some people have to be, like the expectation is that I have to be cognitive of what your threshold is for how comfortable you are with what I spend. And that's where I think like, wow, like, so I have to somehow manage all of these people's perspectives and what they, in order to have people not come to my YouTube page. And the moment I even mention PvP in a video, it will get double the dislikes. This video right here, from people that have died in a PvP situation and don't like me because of it, are the people, they all come there. It's a really interesting thing that kind of happens. And then most recently, we saw something which I think is also to kind of co-sign on some of the toxic nature of games like this, where there was someone most recently that just had a heyday in the official MFR forums.
Oh my Lord.
And it wasn't stopped immediately. I don't know if it's done now, but in the interest of them getting attention, they were willing to go to great lengths to try to like paint a perspective about anyone they could think of and double down on anyone that created content in order to create a perspective of them that they were bad. And a lot of this was prefaced on the fact that they used emulators. And then it was pretty much anything the guy could think of after that. And it was like, and ultimately you could tell that this boiled down to the guy who was obviously he had mental health things that he was, I think he was outwardly, had told people that he was bipolar and things like that, which you could obviously see. The kicker was he named you and I as people that he wanted to out. And we were you and I were two of the only people that actually took this guy aside before all this developed. And we're trying to say like, and we extended a kind hand to him, even though we knew he had rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And it was interesting that we were the first people he went after when all this came down. And I knew that you took that very personally.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this, and I mean, I've shared this with you, and I'll share this with anybody listening. I personally struggle with situations where, and it's a fault of mine, apparently, that, therapy can help me, as can everyone, and all those sorts of things, but it's a fault of mine where if I always think if I do something nice for someone, they'll be nice back to me.
I have that expectation too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like shaming on me, I guess. But like you said, I spent a lot of time trying to just like talk to them, make them feel okay, and just I was like, hey, yeah, because I just knew like, the person wasn't necessarily hyper aware of social situations. I'll say, hyper aware.
That's fair. Yeah. He was actually server muted by another very positive content creator that had felt like, okay, that's enough, because he was like talking over people, and some of the stuff he was talking about was like it brought down the vibe, the energy of what is normally a very positive voice chat. And so proactively people were doing stuff. And I think at the end of the day, some people really tie like things like this. I think his motivation was that he felt some people were, now I don't understand why, and it's funny because I think you and I intuitively still on some level try to empathize with him. Like, I wonder why he was being like this, you know, like I still, like even to this day, if I could have like some sort of, I feel a bit betrayed though, but I would have been like, hey man, like I would love to help you out of your, you know, what you're dealing with. If there's some way I can have a conversation with you, just like some of the people that are crappy to me in my comments, that it's interesting. So at first I wanted to stay politically correct when it came to how I interacted with viewer base and people that left comments on videos. And my stance has changed. I'm like, I kind of view it as though some of these people are trolling, and it's a form of like bullying. They're getting they're getting dopamine from feeling that they're trying to humble people, because I don't know if their perception is, like I said, that if you're a content creator and you have this platform where people watch your videos, that you must have an ego attached to that, and it's my responsibility to humble you and keep you in check.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. A lot of these people, if I don't make them feel silly for being so out there with some of these claims, I'll actually say, hey, instead of putting on this show, I welcome you to message me directly in Discord where I can talk to you. I do really try to, and more so the constructive people, try to interact with people in the comments, you know, while I'm still able to, because I'm still not like a massively big content creator or anything, and I can have a lot better relationships with some of those people. But yeah, and it's funny that once you take this position where you're like, hey, I'm listening to you, or you point out like, hey man, your fight's not with me. I'm just, you know, I'm making content, and on some level I care about you as a viewer, but you shouldn't, you know, you probably shouldn't come at me this way. This isn't my fault. The tone typically, I would say like 90% of the time, does a 180, and you become friends for it. There are several people that I'm friends with that I talk to regularly in Discord messages that maybe had started out in a way where it's like, oh gosh. Now there are some people, I just block them. Like, I don't feel like there's an obligation either that content creators have to like listen to people like that. Like, just because I'm on a public platform, like I'm obligated to let you troll me or to do stuff like that. But it's interesting in this game that it's gotten to that point to where it does feel a little, like I said, you've played a lot of games though. Is Marvel Strike Force the first game that you've made content for? That
Yes, it is. I've never made content before that, but I've been gaming in one way or another since a game called Civilization 1 came out years ago, and then obviously the Nintendo with like Dragon Warrior and, you know, different thing. This game called Conquest on a PC. Anyway, I've been gaming for a long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, like I mentioned, there's a lot of different things toxic wise. And for me, the biggest thing that I think I first experienced any sort of toxicity on is going to sound really weird, but was an online basketball forum that I used to follow back in college.
Yeah.
And I just kind of was like, okay, so that I started seeing, and you see it all everywhere on the internet in general. So I'm not sure if it's a gaming thing, an internet thing, but the thing that I'd want to know, and I think that maybe even myself, I'd start approaching is, what, for a person who's complaining to you or me, whoever, whatever it might be, or saying something, is what do you want me to do differently?
Yeah, like I've actually asked that question too. Recently, where I said, I've even said, hey, I would love to understand your perspective a little bit better, and why, you know, is there something I can do differently? And ultimately, I think when people stop and take a second and they realize, it's like, yeah, this really isn't, you know, you're playing within the parameters of a video game where you didn't set the rules, and I'm upset over something like.
Yeah. I mean, if you or I or anybody were using an exploit to somehow make your missiles hit harder, okay, you're being a all right, hard, beat that out. You know what I mean? But it's like, yeah, that's wrong. Don't do that.
Right.
But if you're just playing within the parameters of the game, legitimate ones, not like, oh, I found this like secret exploit and all of a sudden I'm getting endless gold or something. But what's the problem there? I just don't get it. And I'm like, why are you mad at me? Like, I just want a game. I just want to have fun. Like, and I'm similar to you. You mentioned this a few times where it's like, not all content creators are just egomaniac assholes who did this or started this. Like, I know for me, the only reason I started doing content was because I started making lists for things, and my alliance members started asking me, well, how do you know that? I was like, well, I did this and this. And I just realized, like, I wonder if more people would need help with this. And so I just started doing that. And people are like, oh, this is very helpful. And I'm like, oh, cool. All right, I guess I'll just make these videos to hope and try to help people. And it's obviously grown from there, but I don't know what to do, you know, and I don't know. Like, look, I get that, like anything, you know, anytime you're, I don't even know what the right word is, but like behind a camera or talking to people or have some sort of stage, there's going to be some attention and some, you know, negative things thrown at you. I'm fine with that. I really am. I don't mind it. Like, I screw up stuff all the time. I'm a human being, but I just want it to be like fair screw ups, or like, what did I like? So I spend money in the game.
You
what do
literally,
you want from me?
yeah, you literally don't really have to do anything, you know. And I'm always open to like a constructive, open conversation with people to like. I've even done this too. I've taken things people have taken in, or I've taken things into consideration that people have left constructive messages where I've applied that later on and said thank you for that. But when people come at you sideways, it's like, geez, I'm not obligated to listen to that either. Now, to circle back though, with the state of the game where it's at, and like some of these things with like whaling and whatever, what answers do we have for this stuff as far as, you know, do you feel like the state of the game is affected by the high? Do you feel like this whole whaling thing is hurts the game? Changes that they're making? Do you feel like those things need to be addressed? Should we be excited about invasion still? I mean, like,
so there's two things here. Let's stay on whaling for just 1 second, and then we'll get to the kind of the other aspects of the game, because I think they're slightly different. They might be intertwined a little bit. Okay. But first, for whaling. So I've still looked at this game as a pay to progress faster game. I mean, what's your power now? 1.4, 1.5, or something like that?
Yeah, 1.5.
Okay, so I'm like I said, almost 900K. Yep. So, you know, I'm 600K behind you, and you know, we've started at the exact same time. Obviously I didn't whale, you whaled way more than I did. So to me, I know that I can't beat you in Dimension Duel or an Omega War or anything like that. I mean, I might get a lucky last hit on you, something along those lines. I might Spec Ops, I think if you and I go to head to head, like, you know, it could be a coin flip. Right. So it's like, okay, so there's certain things in the game that I can, if we're in a raid together, you're doing way more damage than me. But there's certain game modes that allow me to perform at a similar level with you, regardless of the difference in spending. Let's just say all of them didn't. I'm still like, okay, you know what? Tony decided to go ahead and just do all of these different things. You know, Zayas decided to spend money and wanted to do these different things. These people are going to be ahead of me. And also, as a free-to-play player, or cheap to play, I recognize that they do need an advantage. If you are going to spend money and not get an advantage, that's a problem. You know, so that's where I become, I'll call it a whale apologist, if you will. And anybody who says that's wrong,
a return on your investment. Yeah, if I spend money, I should have an expectation for that.
Exactly. If that's wrong, then what's right? Okay, so let's just, for argument's sake, say that's the case. So and I actually think, and circling back to your question here, is because I think it's a pay to progress faster. I think that so far, the way the game's set up, it's okay. Now, if they start pumping out too much content too quickly, where I just never, ever have a chance anywhere, that could be a problem. But if they don't pump out content too quickly, then they lose the people spending money. And that's where the balance comes in. And that's where they have to really find things. And you know, I've talked about this, make tons of different levels of invasion. Hopefully there's a couple levels of invasion that you or even someone in your power struggle with. You know what I mean? So I think as far as the whaling goes, I don't mind it. I don't see nonstop offers that are, the RNG on stuff is so high that to me, you can spend a little bit to get a little ahead, or a ton of money, or get lucky to hopefully get lucky and get a really nice set of gear or something.
So does this ultimately come down to better dialed in matchmaking, or do you feel like it's one of those things that you're never going to make everyone happy, because on some level, do you believe that it's working as intended for people to be put in frustration situations?
Yeah, so the answer to that is yes. which is not the answer, is an answer. It's just me saying a random word. But so one, you mentioned matchmaking. Yes, that needs to be, and they've already, that's in the post. They mentioned that they need to do it 100%. So, one of the things that you'd see in game is, say you're at 1.5 and everyone else in your Omega War is, I don't know, 200K less. And then they put you against, 4 800Ks or 5 800Ks and a bunch of 500Ks. That's not even. That is not matchmaking.
I will say, though, the matchmaking has felt better lately by a lot better. But it still doesn't mean that there aren't matches where I mean, I had one earlier where I think I had 68 kills. Now, I'm not getting, man, maybe I did get in the
80s,
70s.
90s, 100s.
Yeah, it still happens where I can have matches where I'll put up some really crazy numbers, but they feel very uncommon now. So I will say that. And then this too, look, I prefer that. I don't play this game. Like I'm not somebody that, okay, last night in World Chat, someone was upset even in World, and they were like, and I even said, what would you like me to do? I don't control the matchmaking. And it was funny because the narrative then quickly changed and it was like, yeah, I know, I understand. And they was like, well, maybe, and I said, and it's funny because he started to say, or he even did say, maybe I shouldn't try as hard. Like, it's like almost implied, like, once you get to a certain point, like I should just stand, which I've done. I've actually stood on the platform if I feel like something's very mismatched. Especially, I'm not into those 3v3 matches. And I can understand by some people wanting to do those because they might give them a better advantage to get the W's that they need on their dailies. Is this a thing where there's never going to be a good answer?
I don't think so. I mean, there's multiple things here. First, you're never going to make everyone happy. We just all have to accept that it is what it is. It's borderline impossible. I don't know if anyone's ever going to do it. So if you're never going to make everyone happy, like, you just try to do the best you can. So to me, the matchmaking is trying to get better. I like that they're trying to do that. And I hope that at some point that they actually, I mean, we're in a different situation too, because we're on the soft launch server. So we don't have as many people to match up with like a lot of the other servers do, where they can, they cross server play on a lot of this PvP stuff. So I don't know. I think that, it can get better and it will get better. I think, Netmarble is going to at some point realize that, okay, this has been enough time for the global launch players, that they should be close to power to these soft launch players. And we can all, we can have them actually play together. So I think that will help our particular server. I mean, look, you can only do what you can do. It's not, like you said, it's not your fault. It's not anyone else's fault. I even think Netmarble has a bit of a challenge on their hands too, because, soft launch was only meant to be for certain people. And, they thought, and a lot more people were interested in the game and came and played. So I'm sure they weren't expecting that, but I do think it will get better. I think over time, I get where people are frustrated, where they're like, what am I supposed to do? I've gone against you before. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? I can't win. And it's like, okay, well, like I said before, it sucks if it's one of my 2 Omega Wars that I'm trying to win. I get it. And at the same time, like,
that actually
what am I losing out on?
happened today, actually. I was on the other side and I wasn't aware you needed to win. And I parked in the back of the zone and quit fighting because I was like, I didn't need that win. So, but I think the thing that gets lost on some people is that regardless of how some people might have a more out there play style to where they like to get into the back and forth with people in the way it's connected to PvP, like the trash talking, the saying stuff in world chat. PvP shouldn't be like taken as a personal thing. At the end of the day, all of this stuff is completely out of our hands. Also, the other thing is, you and I, no one is responsible for how other people play. In every alliance, there's going to be a player that is a great player. You want them for the end result, that they're a good player, and you want them to be on your team for content. But that doesn't mean, or should it have to mean, that your morality aligns and your play style is the exact same. It should never mean that. Earlier you and I were on the phone, and you had one of the greatest examples, and that was when Dennis Rodman played on the Bulls. There were times when Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen flew out to Vegas to pull him out of a hotel room because he was partying it up over. Do you remember when he used to go on those wild excursions? It was like,
oh yeah,
yeah. But like, at the end of the day, they understood that Dennis Rodman was still an asset to their team, regardless of the moralities. They didn't. Everything didn't need to line up to how their worldviews and everything, and they were going to try to control how that stuff worked. And also, there's someone like that in every alliance. There's been inter-alliance conflict that you and I have been like somehow part of that we have done nothing. And the irony was that there were people on both sides that were mad at each other for the same things, and they were trying to hold the content creators accountable. It's like, you guys have your beef with each other. It's like, we got nothing to do with it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm not this person's
They're a grown man, and I'm still going to be friends with these people, or I'm going to be on the same team because I want to win. It doesn't, like, I'm not in this game to get, like, deep into the moralities, or I'm going to end up being one of those people, likewise, that's, like, gets mad if I'm killed in a PvP zone or something like that. I'm completely disconnected from that. It's not to say I've never been caught up in the competitive heat of the moment or anything, where I've been, like, upset or whatever, but I don't want to, like, to bring that person down outside of the game because they beat me in a video game. I guess that's where some of this stuff has gotten really wild. Like this current thing with this guy in the official forums, his end result was that he was trying to tear people down outside of the game. Like everything was about legalities and things like that, and like trying to prove that there was, it was something that I'm
people from stuff, and I'm like, where is this coming from? And
I'm like, weird.
Anyway.
But, yeah. So I think this was a pretty good, you know what? I think for you and I too, this is a medicinal conversation because it feels good to just get this stuff out. You know, you and I have had a lot of like very passionate conversations about some of these topics where it's like, oh my God, it's like, what is this stuff? You know, we just want to make videos and share passion with the community. And sometimes you're like, why am I somebody screaming in a voice chat now or something? And like, what? I'm not even one of the people you're mad at. Like,
I was just saying, I mean, I guess to cap that off a little bit, I just don't, I mean, for anybody who is upset and if anybody who's made it this far in the video, like, honestly, come to Halfsen, come to myself, like, let us, like, what is it that, you know, you really want from us? I mean, I just don't understand. Like, we're both, I mean, I know for me, like, we just want to play, want to have fun, want to make content. Some of it's silly, some of it's helpful, but that's it. We're not really complicated human beings. Like, you know, so anyway, and what do you think the developer should do? You know what I mean? Like, is there something that you should do? And if so, like, I encourage you to go to the forums, mention that, like, they do try to listen. They can't do everything, but go voice your opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's actually even stuff going on right now in world chat that's like, oof. Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's more drama, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just caught that glimpse of it and I was like, whew, like, I wish I knew what to say at this point. Like, no, like I shouldn't be surprised by this stuff. But even you've experienced some people have gone to your channel and they take stuff out on you because it's low-hanging fruit. And it's, even though you are one of the nicest human beings I've ever met and you're such a good guy, I really hope too that your channel grows as you make more and more content for this game, because you're a funny guy, you got a lot to offer this community, and I hope that doesn't get short-sighted by people that want to stifle your progress simply because they're frustrated by in-game mechanics that are out of our hands or our alliance of all things, which is, you know, odd. Like I said too, at the end of the day, there's people in every alliance that, you know, I don't go knocking on somebody's door because of how their alliance mate made a video or something that had to do with my, like, that's on you guys. You guys figure that out. I appreciate the fact I can't relate to some of this stuff, but man, it's been an interesting thing to develop like the tools to deal with some of this stuff. Like I said, initially I proactively would try to be very political and kind to people, even if they didn't deserve it. And now I feel like, well, I'm not going to be bullied. So if you're someone I can just tell is just you're here trying to get some fulfillment out of stifling me, I don't mind putting people in their place either, because, you know, typically those people are kind of easy to do that with too. And I don't know. It's just weird that it's come to this point where I'm in content creation. We're talking about this stuff but it feels good to get it off my chest too. You know what I mean? And even to talk about the state of the game too, and how the whaling affects. I wish I could wave a magic wand where everybody gets to be happy. But some of the expectations are wild. Like some people want the same end result for being casual players. They want the same result as the tryhards. There's some people that are free to play and they have an expectation for the bar to be much closer than, which is on the developers too, at the end of the day, to not allow that the possibilities to get so high. But that's not a player problem. You know what I mean? If anything, they're helping the game. But maybe they should make spending more universally attainable. I'm not against some of those things. You know what I mean? I agree with them. But that's not for me to decide. I don't develop this game on any level. But who knows? Down the road, maybe we can be a voice for our community, and we'll have a relationship with Netmarble. I know on some level that you have some insight, but you know, it's maybe at some point this will be something where we can talk on people's behalf if they are frustrated with something, and instead of taking it out on us, we work together to come to a common goal. And for me, I'll be the first one to say, bring the whale bar down. I'm fine with it, man. I don't want that. I'm a content creator. I need the end result. I need to be one of the first people to do this, or that thing won't be relevant for me to make a video on. That's how I look at it. Right. My brand is doing, like when Invasion comes out, my thing is bringing you numbers, bringing strategies, sharing what other top players do. That's my thing, and I love it. This is what I want out of the game. So when some of those, I can't do that as a free-to-play and have an expectation that I'm going to be able to show you the fifth phase of difficulty on Invasion as a free-to-play player. It just doesn't, it's not how it works. And I knew going in that this is going to be an upfront investment for me to try to make the stuff as soon as it came out, so you could see the 105 Blitz, and with the expectation I don't have to be apologetic about bringing you that, unless I'm, you know, whatever, like unless I meet some criteria I'm aware of for each and every viewer that has a perspective on what I've spent or whatever. So yeah, and I think the state of the game overall, I mean, circling it all back to the end, I think it's solid. It's not great, it's not bad, it's solid. I think there's a lot of hope for the future. I'm pretty content where it's at. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm content too. I still stick, even to this day, with my 5. I still think that this is, I'm hopeful that it will be better, and that's all you can be. I hope Invasion's a ton of fun. So yeah. All right, Wolvie, we're going to wrap it up. We're about going in on an hour almost. So, but yeah, I knew we were going to do this.
Preview. Yeah, they got a preview of our phone calls.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you for joining me today. And I hope we can do lots more of these in the future, brother. Love your face.
For sure, man. Yep. Love you too, buddy.